Unless you're wearing a shirt or a button that says "I'm a Zionist." What does
Yeah, so Tommy doesn't even. People are acting like they're exposing Tommy, being, oh no, wow, we found. Tommy doesn't want people to know this. Tommy doesn't want to know white British people, patriotic people to know that he's a Zionist. He's literally wearing a button that says "I am a Zionist." Why? He's wearing IDF shirts. He's going to Israel. He's wearing a. It says right there, "I'm a Zionist." How do you? Why do you think he's trying to hide it? Anyways, this is pretty base. Watch this.
All this extremism. So I'm very happy to meet the devil.
Unless you're wearing a shirt or a button that says "I'm a Zionist." What does a Zionist mean to you? What is a Zionist?
What we've done and where we've come in 3 years. If we had funding, we'd finish Islam.
In realms about Zionism, about international banking, about a lot of things like that. And since it does denote that it is Israel first, can you possibly serve two masters? Meaning, can you serve England and Israel at the same time? Tommy Robbins.
What do you mean two masters? You don't. Okay. As somebody who believes in every nation state being able to defend itself, being able to having the right to exist and having the right to defend itself, you have to be a Zionist if you believe that. Okay? Because what is Zionism? Zionism just is nationalism for Israel. Zionism is the belief that Israel should be a country and should be able to defend itself as a country. That is Zionism. I've been to Israel. I've talked to many Israelis, and they all have their own different ideas about what Zionism is, but this is the shared part. So there are other parts of it that they diverge from each other, that are not the same, but this is the shared part. And again, because this is the shared part, that would become, the shared part would be the definition. The parts that are different, that would not be the definition, but the part that they all share would be the definition. So the definition of Zion, it's like a Venn diagram, like all these different explanations of Zionism, the part where they all share together, that would be the definition. And based on that, the definition is anybody who believes that Israel should be a country and should be able to defend itself, they would be a Zionist. But this should not even be controversial, because I don't just think that about Israel. I think that about every country. Every country should be able, every country that is now been officially recognized as a country should be able to exist and should be able to defend itself. So being a Zionist is not very special. It only becomes special for Israel because no other country is threatened or its existence challenged as much as Israel. That's why Zionism is special. But if it wasn't being challenged, if Israel wasn't being constantly threatened to be annihilated, it would just be, Zionism would just be the same as, like, yeah, I think, I don't know, South Africa or Uganda or Indonesia or Chile. Those countries should exist. It would just be as significant as that. It's just basically that's what it means. Anyways, let's continue.
Of the EDL, based out of England and Luton, actually, right?
Luton, just north of London.
Okay. I'm going to ask him a few questions. Right. Now, I noticed in your when you were speaking up there, or your co-partner, I forget his name again.
Kevin.
Yep, Kevin. He had mentioned that you were the first group to fight Islam politically in England. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're the first group to tackle it and to take to the streets.
By the way, this is from years ago. He's a lot younger here, but they're digging this up. Like, they're posting this now. Like, this is quite recent, just like 2 days ago. A lot of far-right people are trying to, like, expose Tommy as a far-right. So these are the videos that they're digging up.
Against it. And we only took to the streets due to an inability by our political leaders and our political elite and our police forces to tackle this problem, to identify the problem. We have more Muslim extremists now in Europe than ever in history. Okay. And Islam's been trying to take over Europe for 1,400 years, and it's now closer than it ever has been.
Isn't there other groups, though, like the National Front, the Front National, and the BNP, who's been fighting this for years?
When you talk about fighting it for years, those groups differ in many ways, because those are just Nazis, backward, nothing.
Have they not been fighting Islamification?
They fight anything that's not white. So they don't. We are sole purpose to tackle Islam. They tackle and they have hatred for anything that's not white.
It's not white. Were you part of the BNP at one time?
I was part of the BNP in
Oh wow! So this was fantastic. Let's listen to this again. I was just reviewing, bringing up another video. This is fantastic. He was showing his difference between himself and other people. Listen to this.
Our police forces to tackle this problem, to identify the problem. We have more Muslim extremists now in Europe than ever in history. Okay. And Islam's been trying to take over Europe for 1400 years, and it's now closer than it ever has been.
Isn't there other groups, though, like the National Front, the Front National, and the BNP, who's been fighting this for years?
When you talk about fighting it for years, those groups differ in many ways, because those are just Nazis, backward, nothing.
Have they not?
So those are the. So he's like he's separating. He's like, our group is different. We're not far right. Those other groups are like Nazis, backwards. He's basically talking. Look, even back then when Tommy was so young, because I was assuming that here he's not going to be as as wise as he is today, because maybe back then he was like more mixed with these types of groups. But now I'm looking at his videos all the way from back then, and he's like, yeah, we don't. Even back then, he didn't like these far right groups, like these other groups. Those groups that you're saying that they fighting Islam before me, these are just some Nazi backward. He's separating himself from these far right ideology.
I've been fighting Islamification.
They fight anything that's not white.
Yeah, those other groups, he's like, he's like, we're fighting Islam. Those other groups, they're just fighting anything that is not white. Even back then, I assume when I watch Tommy Robinson videos and I'm listening to him, and I'm saying like, okay, this guy is not a racist. This guy separates Islam from Muslims. This guy is not against migration. He's against mass, unfiltered migration and illegal migration. Because he constantly gets accused of racism, I assume that, okay, maybe when he was younger, he was maybe more racist. Maybe back then he was racist, and then he just became better. He became wiser. But now when I look at his old videos, this video is from years ago. He's like, yeah, we're not like those other groups. Those other groups are just anti-white. Even back then he was like that. Like, this is amazing, because I thought he's just not going to be right now. I mean, he is not as good as he is right now when it comes to explaining things, but he was still not racist. He was still anti-far right.
So they don't. We are sole purpose to tackle Islam. They tackle and they have hatred for anything that's not white.
It's not white. Were you part of the BNP at one time?
I was part of the BNP in 2004.
Were you part of the BNP at one time?
So he left them.
I was part of the BNP in 2004.
Were you part of the BNP at one time?
I was part of the BNP in 2004.
So why are they? Look, I didn't replay this part 3 times. They just did it themselves to expose them. By the way, he left the EDL because it became racist. Like, how racist can Tommy be if he left the group that he started because they're racist? Like, oh yeah, the BNP is straight up Nazis. Yeah, and people are exposing him because he was part of it. Yeah, he left because he didn't agree with them. He started his own group that was not racist.